Yeah.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa, ni hao. It's time for the Amish Inquisition yet again. Episode 146 on Sunday, the 23rd of August. Je suis Amish Phil.
Ik heiße Amish Ben.
I'm Amish Matt.
Ah, boo.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
And tonight's guest is a returning guest. It's Steve, the online chemistry tutor. How are we doing,
Good
Steve?
evening. I'm very well. How are you?
Not so bad.
Thank you,
Go
sir.
to onlinechemistrytutor.net for all your online chemistry tutoring needs.
Let's face it, who doesn't have those?
No,
Well,
no one.
Are you on various social media platforms as well?
I am on them. If I'm honest, I don't tend to update them as often as I probably should. But I am out there. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. If I ever figure out how to use it. But yeah, I'm out there in various places.
Good. We'll put all the links in the show notes as usual.
mm-hmm.
You've been on before and we've never really talked about what you actually do with the online chemistry tutoring.
Well, I actually do.
So, maybe we should start with that.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your website and what you're doing.
The website's really just a sort of a landing page for people to find me. I do the online teaching using Zoom, funnily enough, which we're using now. And I've been using it for nearly 4 years. So I like to remind people I was using it before everybody started using it.
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool, yeah. And I do all the things that a private tutor would do if they were in somebody's house, except I do it over the internet, as it were. I've got all sort of various resources and things that I use at school.
How do you, sorry, Steve, how do you steal tea bags over the internet?
I've literally no answer to that. but I mean, one of the things that be able to sort of help kids online. I work with kids from all over the country, and I've worked with a few in other countries as well. I've worked with students in Switzerland, France, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Dubai. I've got a student in Brunei lined up, Hong Kong. So yeah, I even had an inquiry from Uruguay, but unfortunately that one didn't come through. I was gutted about that one. Looking forward to expanding to South America, but not much.
Now, why would someone in Brunei want to have GCSE or A-level chemistry tuition?
The students at international schools, so they're studying GCSE and A-level syllabuses.
In other countries?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
International schools, many international schools are modelled on the British education system.
Right. So do they take the same exams?
In some cases, yeah. The lab that I worked with in Switzerland was due to take the AQA A-level chemistry this summer. Same exam.
Right. God, I didn't know that.
They tend to. Many international schools follow either British or American education systems and qualifications. It's not unusual.
Is that because they're seen as being like a higher caliber than other countries?
I think so. I couldn't say with total confidence. I don't know whether it's related to the fact that a lot of international schools, English is the main language. So I guess it makes sense to follow in English-speaking qualifications of some kind. Don't know the exact reasons.
Oh.
I think that's it. I think the British education system is more respected internationally than people would have us believe.
Right.
Yeah, I was on next many years ago when I was working in the system. I went on a trip to China to visit a school and visit one or two teachers out there back in 2013. And this was at the same time when the then Education Secretary, who I will not name,
Michael Gove.
Yes, that's the bastard. He had this idea of bringing Chinese maths teachers to Britain because their maths system was so much better than ours, even though the evidence was only based upon Shanghai and only a select number of schools. We felt that was a good enough reason. And this was in the news at the time, and I mentioned to one or two of the Chinese teachers that I met, oh, we're bringing some of your compatriots to Britain to teach us how to teach maths. And they found it quite amusing. And if anything, they said that, well, it was a surprise to them because the movement has very much been the other way. There are lots of British teachers working in China. And one of the things...
Korea.
What, sorry?
In Korea as well.
Yeah, even all over the world. On LinkedIn, there are loads. I've made sort of contact with loads of teachers, and there are loads of British teachers working all over the world. But the Chinese teachers said that they felt that one of the things that they could learn from British teachers was creativity. They felt that they were very good at developing academic skills in the students, but felt that perhaps we could help them with creativity. I mean, to be fair, some of the things that I saw out there are absolutely amazing. Some of the things that their kids were coming up with, I really don't think we could teach them much about creativity.
In what way?
Well, think back to like your DT lessons. What did you make in DT when you were at school?
Burglar alarm.
Burglar alarm.
Letter holder.
They showed me. They had a group of kids doing their DT project. They made a self-playing drum kit that you could program. You could program with different drum beats. Amazing. Yeah.
A drum machine.
Yeah, but like a physical one. So it had all the drum. It had all the drums and what have you, the hi-hat and everything, and a series of mechanical, things to hit the drums with. And yeah, it was really, really clever, really intricate. Very impressive.
The maths thing makes me laugh because I was reading years ago. I think might have been a Malcolm Gladwell book. Can't remember.
Outliers, is it?
It might have been Outliers. Are you thinking the same thing about the Chinese counting system?
Yeah, where they have the crosses on the.
Well, it's something to do,
lines.
linguistically. They count numbers completely different than us, and that's why you have this sort of stereotype or trope of Eastern kids being really good at maths. There's some sort of linguistic advantage with the Chinese language when it comes to number.
Mm.
But you wouldn't expect Michael Gove to know anything about that, would you?
It's easier to blame the
Or
teacher.
anything.
Yeah.
Easier to blame the teachers.
Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking before about the education system and how it's been affected by the pandemic. So I think we should talk about that because, and then leading up to what's been happening over the last couple of weeks.
Mm.
What's your feeling about how our education system's been affected since sort of February, March?
Oh, well, it's been pretty horrendous. I mean, from my point of view, I see it from the point of view of the kids. And I was working with a lot of youngsters who were getting geared up. So February, they're getting geared up to take final exams that are going to be a big deal to their futures. And all of a sudden, they're told you're not going to have an exam. They really did have the rug pulled from under them. So I felt desperately sorry for them.
When was that? Because didn't schools shut middle of March, 21st of March?
Yeah, the exams were cancelled. I think it was around about 23rd of March. That was the official date for cancellation of the exams. And, and obviously at that point, I'm sort of speaking to parents and students and trying to offer them reassurance and trying to sort of explain what I think will happen. I couldn't have predicted this last 6 months that have unfolded for sure, I think the thing that annoys me, looking back now, and the fiasco regarding the results, is that they had 6 months to come up with something. And granted, it's the middle of a pandemic and they've got a lot on the plate at the minute, but I just think that this should have been a higher priority than it was. If you take the time from the exam, the schools being closed to approaching results day, it was all about whether the schools would open or not, what social distancing measures would have to be taken. Nobody was really talking about what are we going to do about these students' results.
Right.
And the whole thing with the algorithm, I mean, you know,
Oh, well, let's explain, because we have to bear in mind a lot of people listening are Antipodean or or North American or European. So schools shut in March, and then shortly after they cancelled the exams.
Yeah.
A couple of days later. So then what was there, just a vacuum of information regarding the exams?
Well, the students everybody was told that schools would have to come up with what result they think the student would have got if they'd taken the exam, basically.
So it's like a teacher assessment.
Exactly. And they were given plenty of time to come up with that. And they were given guidance as to how that should be done. And this in itself, I mean, I'm glad I wasn't still working in the system, because that would have been an incredibly difficult exercise anyway.
Yeah.
They do have to give every year, they have to give a series of predicted grades. They have to say what they think the students will get. Because you might have a situation in the normal circumstances where a student has a serious incident just before an exam is going to be taken through no fault of their own. And there's a mechanism in place for awarding that student a grade based upon what the teacher think they would have got. So from that point of view, yeah, that system exists. Because obviously, you know, something could happen. You know, you could have a serious bereavement on the eve of the exam, and clearly they're not going to be able to take an exam. And there's special dispensation in place for those sorts of things. Essentially, that was applied to the whole cohort, where they're all having a grade assigned to them. And I was trying to put myself in the position of somebody who was working in school and what you would do and what would happen. And I think what will have happened at schools up and down the country is that departments will have got together and department heads will have said to teachers, okay, let's begin by collating a series of grades that we think will be appropriate for our students, and then we'll bring them together and we'll review them together, and we'll look at whether the percentages for each grade are similar-ish to what we've had in previous years. And those grades would then be submitted. What happened is that when the results came in, and Ofqual, who are the organisation who are responsible for exams across the country and the awarding of qualifications, when those results came in and were compiled, it was found that they would have been, if those results had been offered at face value, they would have been record breaking, to the tune of about 10% above the previous best year's performance. Right. So you can ask the question, well, why did that happen? Well, you could give a number of reasons. You could say, well, the teachers were over predicting. That's one reason. Bear in mind that the teachers will look at their students, and when they're asked to predict this grade, they'll be thinking about what would this student get on a good day. You know, if they perform the way that they performed throughout the year, what are they likely to get? And there's every chance that those grades will always be a little bit higher than they might be, because having been through the exams process many years, there are always some students who have a bad day and who drop a grade. You've no way of knowing which ones it will be.
Would they also be thinking about league tables as well, Steve?
Well, assurances were made that that would not be a concern at all, and the results would not be. But I think you've just touched on another problem, which is the inherent lack of trust that exists between the education system and the government.
Yeah,
I think you've hit upon the problem, and I think a lot of teachers will be thinking. There are a number of different sort of angles on this. Some of them will have been thinking, well, if we predict exactly what we think they'll get, and that school down the road predict 10% higher, if all the grades are taken at face value, their results are going to be 10% better for their students than ours, and that's not fair. And all of a sudden, then you've got kind of a situation where schools might, and I say might, if you've got a teacher working in these schools, they would, I'm sure, vehemently say, no, we would never do that. I think it's human nature to want to help the children a little bit and to make sure that they get the best grades that they can get without being seen to be totally unfair and to give them suing play to the grade. So when these grades were submitted, they were on the high side. And Ofqual, I don't know exactly where the decision came that they would have to be lowered to bring them more into line with previous years. And this is where Ofqual decided that they need to apply this algorithm to the results to essentially normalize them, if you like, to bring them more in line with what we've had in previous years. Now, that was done. The sets of results that came out were more in line with what's happened in previous years. But of course, we had a situation where there were many students who had been, say, working at A and B grade all the way through, who were collecting C's and B's on results day. And the school couldn't believe it, the student couldn't believe it, and it caused a great deal of distress to a lot of young people. The government initially tried to defend it. The education minister, Nick Gibb, was doing a radio interview where a prospective, I think it was a dentistry student who had her grades marked down, said to him, "You ruined my life." That was the word that she used. Those were the words she used. And you could hear him squirming a little bit, understandably, because any human being surely is going to react to that and to feel a pang of sadness. He tried to defend the results as being robust. That was the key word that the government were using. This is a robust set of data.
Strong and stable.
Oh, yeah. But the clamour to change the results became so overwhelmingly strong that the government were forced to U-turn and say that the original teacher grades would be accepted, and the results that were issued to the students would be replaced by the predicted teacher grade, unless the result awarded by the algorithm was higher than the teacher predicted grade, which I think was about 0.2% of all results. So there were some who, and that, in a way, that's fair enough. Because imagine if you're one of the lucky ones that the algorithm has decided you're a better student.
No,
You're expecting C's and you get D's, you get B's, and you're thinking, it's all right. You're one of the 0.2%.
yeah.
And then a week later, you're told, well, actually, we're going to go for the teacher assessed grade. You'd be, like I said, the 0.2% feel a bit gutted. But yeah, I think the government said, no, whichever grade is higher, that's the grade you're going to get.
Was there not? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was just wondering if there's any kind of ethical process that they went through about having an algorithm, a computer decide grades rather than an exam. And I assume each exam is assessed by a teacher, isn't it?
The exams are marked by teachers, yeah.
That's what I mean. So it's quite an interesting ethical thing, isn't it? That you get an algorithm to do it based on postcodes from what I've read and, you know, previous performance and all the rest of it. And like, so it's just it just picks randomly, right? You did worse. You did worse. You did worse. You did worse. That's bizarre. I don't understand how anybody could think that is a fair way of.
No one likes exams, though, do they? Let's just have the
no.
algorithm going forward.
I do. I like exams. I'd have been screwed if I was given my projected grades.
B2 to be
I like
fair.
exams. You can cram for any exam and just waffle through it. Get a good mark.
That is surely that to me. If someone, you know, Ofqual, whoever decided, was sat in that meeting and went, right, we're just going to get this computer and that's going to decide randomly who's going to get with no thought for prior, you know, that particular student's performance as compared to another. That's just bizarre to me.
Well, when it was announced that we were going to use the algorithm grades, the teachers said, well, their immediate reaction was, well, why on earth did we bother? If we're just going to do this. And I was going to say something else as well about the algorithm grades.
Oh, sorry.
It's not your fault. I just
Wasn't there some sort of appeals process?
Yes, I mean, this is another example of how the whole thing has been sort of fudged and they've been making it up as they go along, or it feels that way. Initially, they said, we're cancelling the exams. You will be awarded a grade in the summer. If you are not happy with the grade, there will be an appeal process and you'll have the opportunity, all being well, to take an exam in the autumn. Now, to my students, what I said to them was, my advice is, because bear in mind, from my point of view, I'm preparing students for an exam that's not going to happen anymore. And those students and parents are going to think, well, this exam's not going to happen. We don't really need Steve's services. What I said to them was, in my opinion, you should prepare for that autumn exam, because if you don't get the grade that you want, that's your second chance. It's your chance to show what you can do. And some students did. They've stayed on with me. They've worked right through sort of the lockdown period. They've covered all the material. And they weren't awarded the grade that they were hoping for by the algorithm and also by the school. It wasn't quite high enough for the university course that they want. And they're on target to hopefully get that grade in the autumn exam. But there are a lot of students who once and there are lots of reasons for this, but once the lockdown was announced, a lot of them, I think, probably didn't carry on working, carry on studying. Now, there could be lots of reasons for that. It was, to my mind, in my humble opinion, it was the school's responsibility to keep this going and to move towards an online approach to keep people studying. And again, my opinion, a little bit controversial, but I don't think that state schools have really stepped up in that respect. Some of them have, but many of them haven't. The students haven't had the support that they could have had from home. Many of the private schools moved towards having online lessons. They took the students' timetable and delivered it online. Now,
why would that be?
Well, maybe they did it for altruistic purposes, or maybe because they had to justify their fees.
Yeah,
but either way, those students still got their education or something close to it. So the outcome is that those students have still been working and still been studying. I approached some of my former schools at the time lockdown was just being announced. I was in touch with one of my former colleagues and just said what's going on, and he said we're expecting to announce the closure anytime soon, looking into online teaching as a possibility. And I contacted my former school just to remind them that I still existed, but to make the point that I've been delivering online teaching for best part of 1,000 hours by that point. And if they were looking at moving towards an online teaching approach, I'm at their disposal to help in any way that I can. I didn't say what kind of help, what form that would take. I was just thinking that they might not have the experience of the platforms that I have. I could have offered to help train teachers to use the platforms and how to use materials, all kinds of things. I didn't presume to know what they needed or if they needed any help at all. I got a 2-line reply basically saying, "Thank you for your email. It's against school policy to offer private tuition services to students or parents of students," and that was it.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, I didn't even say, please promote me to your parents. I was thinking I could help the school, and I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I got that reply, and I thought, well, if that's going to be the standard reply from schools, if I approach them to offer help, then clearly it's not really worth me trying.
Where does that come from? Where does that thinking come from?
What thinking that
the reply?
I genuinely don't know. I was thinking that this is an exceptional situation, and if schools are really serious about continuing to provide the best education they can for the students, they're going to have to be creative, and they're going to have to look outside the usual sphere for novel solutions.
Right.
That was where I was coming from, and I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they had enough problems as it was. Maybe they just didn't take the time to read my email and sort of misinterpreted what I was trying to offer them. I don't know.
Draws a stark contrast between what you described as the reaction in private schools to state schools, doesn't it?
This is what I mean, and it's controversial, I know, but I think a lot of state schools haven't stepped up to the plate on this.
Were private schools required to do the same as state schools regarding like looking after kids from key worker families and whatnot?
They would have, yes.
Right.
They should have, I think. I don't
That's
know.
not an excuse.
That's a point, actually. They might not have been legally required to do that. I don't actually know.
No.
Good question. I'm not sure.
It wasn't all schools anyway, was it? That was required. He said it could be that it was like there was a hub, wasn't it? And a few pupils from a few different schools went there. So I don't know.
It varied between different councils, different areas. I think depending on the demand.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of schools, I think, prepared to accept kids of key workers, and then there was practically no take up, and they shut anyway.
Yeah.
Someone I know who worked in a school was pretty much on standby in like April and May, and she was meant to do so many days a week doing the looking after key worker kids, and she just kept getting cancelled every week because there weren't enough kids, and she didn't go into school for months. So are the exams going to go ahead in autumn?
Yes, that's the plan. The plan is that there's going to be a full suite of exams in October.
Who's going to take them?
Who's going to do what, sorry?
Who's going to take them?
Any student who is not happy with their grade can ask to be entered for the exam.
Right.
And like I say, any students with any sense will have been working during the time that the schools have been closed. Hopefully with support from the school. But speaking to the students I work with, that has been very patchy. Some have been very well supported and some have not.
Right.
Of course, some students get support from people like me and have been working and studying throughout. I have heard on the subject of private tutors coming in and helping share the burden. I have anecdotal reports, anecdotal only, of teachers on lockdown taking advantage of the situation to provide private tuition.
I heard that. Yeah.
And I'm pretty much flooding the market.
Yeah, so they're getting paid twice, basically, getting paid by the school to stay home and then, doing £20 an hour private tuition online.
The ones who are vocal on social media have been saying throughout lockdown they've never worked so hard. now, in some cases, that may well be true. There may be, there may be some schools who've got everything sorted out and moved from standard teaching to online teaching, and that will have required teachers to work very incredibly hard to prepare for that, to get ready and everything else. I don't doubt that. But I'm pretty certain there have been quite a lot of teachers who have had essentially a bit of a holiday.
Sounds good. I don't know, none of my like nieces and nephews at primary and secondary school have not had any full online Zoom or online classroom sessions. They've just had things emailed to them or things like that, no kind of interaction until sort of just before the summer holidays. I think some of them invited in for I think it was an hour or 2 hours a week for something like 3 or 4 weeks.
Online?
No, actually physically into school when they sort of eased lockdown or whatever they did. I can't remember when.
Right.
The initial easing, because 2 of them were in they're in year 10 now, so going to year 11 in September.
Oh yes, I remember now. They wanted to try and get the year 10 kids, the last year of primary school kids, I think, in for a bit.
Yeah, so I believe, I heard again anecdotally, there was someone I worked with, her daughter went back to school for a week or something at the end of term. What
about you, Ben? What was your experience with the school?
Yeah, my daughter had Zoom calls twice a week with all their class and their teacher, and every week there was online resources available, a lot of them, printing out loads for maths and English specifically, and then they have like topic which covers science and all kinds of things. She's only in year 2, just going into year 3 now. So it's, you could argue it's not as, I mean, it is important because she's learning. She's at that important age where she's picking a lot of stuff up, but she's not studying for any exams or anything. I think she has missed out on her first SATs. That would have been this year. So that's just been, no one's been bothered about those really. But
When did the Zoom call start? Was that straight after the lockdown?
immediately, yeah.
There you go.
My 8-year-old had a half-hour Zoom call in the last week of term. That was the only contact he had with school since the shut in March.
Good God, really?
As far as like online, and it wasn't like a teaching lesson. It was more of a just. Do you remember us? Talk with the class. But they did get work sent home, so you would get work sent every day via the website, and then you would take pictures of the work completed, send it to the teacher, and then you get like a like or something or a comment.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing as well, you've got to take into account, it would have been a bit of a lottery as to the teacher's own caring needs, I suppose. Unless, I suppose they would be key workers. They could send the kids to school, couldn't they? So, yeah, they've got no excuses.
Well, what was I going to say? I was just about to say something. It's gone again. Dear idea.
See now.
Amnesia.
Well,
Well, yes, I remember. One of the arguments against providing online learning was that there are households out there that don't have access to the internet, and it will put their children at a disadvantage. That's the argument that was made.
Equality.
I mean,
Bring everyone down to the same level.
Yeah.
So 5% that don't have the internet.
It's hardly any.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that if the government had said they'd put out an appeal to telecommunication companies around the country, they could probably have persuaded companies to donate
Dongle.
Yeah. It's Trevor Bayliss and his wind-up radios all over again.
Wind-up dongles.
I bet they would have. The companies who would have done that, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, of course they would.
You know, and it could have been
a big logo on it.
Well, yeah, but yeah, and maybe the laptop as well. But you don't actually need a laptop, do you? If you're accessing the lesson, any kind of device would do. So
I'm sure.
The problem is basically saying they can't all have it, so none of them can have it.
That's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah.
Who's making that argument about the?
I can't remember who made the argument. I don't know whether it was the teaching unions or whether it was certain individuals or teaching groups. I don't know, but I heard that argument made. And
one of those times where you should just say, no, that's a bad idea, shut up.
I think there was some hesitancy over, I think there are particular safeguarding issues when it comes to online teaching, isn't there? So on the Zoom call that my
online teacher
had, it was like no adults, no parents were allowed on screen. You're allowed to sit in the same room and listen, but you couldn't be on screen. There was a teacher there, and she was flanked by 2 off-screen teachers as well.
What?
Yeah, because they're worried about online pervs or something. It's a safeguarding thing.
There was one story, I think, wasn't it? Where someone infiltrated a school lesson and started swearing. I think they just started swearing and stuff. It was a bit like, have you seen that Father Ted episode where they ring up priest chat and there's all those teenagers on the other line? Oh, fucking priest. But it could have been worse than that, but that's how I remember it in a comedic sense. But I think there was one story of an infiltration of a Zoom meeting that was set up by a school. But I mean, that's why Zoom put all the requirements for passwords, and you have to have waiting rooms now. It's a lot more secure than it was, and that's just improvement. I suppose that's what you have to do these days. But people are sensible. I mean, I don't think people are given enough credit these days. I mean, the general populace. There are a lot of stupid people out there, but
How do you feel about schools opening September, Steve? Do you think everything's going to go off without a hitch?
There bound to be problems. I think there'll be isolated outbreaks because although they say that children are far less susceptible to COVID, they still do get it, and there will be a child at a school who contracts COVID, who perhaps isn't, God willing, isn't particularly ill themselves, but it results in the school having to be closed. It's bound to happen. But I do think it's the best place for them. And I think most of them want to go back. I've been talking to the students I work with saying, all being well, you'll be back, next week. And they're all enthusiastic about going back. They want to go back because it's gives them a sense of things returning to normal, which I think we could probably all do with. But it's bound to be fraught with difficulties in the first instance. And to be fair to the teachers, they'll be worried, because they're obviously more at risk than the children are. And there will be some teachers who won't be able to go back to school because they'll be in vulnerable groups. It's going to be tricky. It's not going to go off without a hitch. We'll have to see how it goes, and hopefully they'll be given the support that they need to do that. I know I was maybe bashing them a little bit earlier on, but I still care about the education system. I still care about kids, and I hope it really does go well.
Maybe the vulnerable teachers could Zoom call in. Just have a camera at the front of the class.
Well,
you're in the back row.
Funnily enough,
a device that throws chalk.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the device that throws chalk's a great idea. I mean, I can sort of attest to that as being something that you can do, because I went full time doing this at the start of 2019, and at the end of my first day, the first Monday in January, I got a call from I had a sixth form in London. Saying, to cut sort of a long story short, our chemistry teachers left. The agency teachers that we're getting in, we're not happy with. We've got a couple of newly qualified teachers who are enthusiastic and bright and great, but we need an experienced person to help our A-level class. Would you consider looking at a remote solution? And to cut a long story short, I provided 4 hours of teaching a week for 6 months and got them through their exams. Or helped them, from my desk 200 miles away. So you can teach remotely. There are technical challenges associated with it, but it can be done. Needless to say, we didn't do any practical work, but yeah, it can be done, and it's very easy to throw up barriers and to say why things can't be done. But these are kids' education; you only get one chance, so we should be looking for solutions, not problems.
Yeah.
What was different for you doing that over the internet as compared to being in a classroom?
One of the differences is that you can't kind of walk around the class when they're working on things and sort of look over their shoulder and help them like that. Mm-hmm. You can do most of the things. You'd be surprised with the technology now. You can do most of the things that you could do, even if you were there in person. And one of the sort of the default arguments against online teaching, it's not the same as being there. Well, no, it's not, but there's still an awful lot that you can accomplish if you're sort of creative. I mean, getting feedback from students on work. I mean, it's not very sort of high tech, but if I ask a student a question in the class, and they're doing, let's say, a calculation, I want them to show me the working, they'll just do that. They'll just hold up a piece of paper with the working on. I'll look at it and say, yeah, that's fine, but you've made a mistake in the third line. Can you see what it is? So there are a lot of things you can do. I was at a meeting not unlike this for the Tutors Association, because there is a national organisation for private tutors. And a lot of the people who go there are people who tutor at their home or at the homes of the students. Not many are online tutors like myself. And I was in a breakout room with 3 other tutors who were talking about the fact that they were really missing tutoring people and being in the same room as them. And they were making the move towards online tutoring and finding it a little bit strange. And I asked them a question. I said, what is it specifically that you feel like you can't do now that you're working online that you could do when you were there in the same room as the person you're tutoring? And they were stumped. They couldn't come up with anything. It took them 5 minutes to come up with something. And I think it's just that the idea is a bit different and it's a bit strange. It's not quite normal. And there's always resistance to change. But for me, I think we have to start looking at other ways of educating students because, we're hoping that this will go away and things will return to normal, but it could be around for the next 12 or 18 months. And if schools are having to close down for 3 or 4 weeks every sort of 3 or 4 months, then we need to find a way of keeping their education going.
Yeah.
There was a big thing in the media a couple of weeks ago saying that something like we'd gone back sort of like 10 years as far as in terms of equality and how rich kids tend to do better than poorer kids in school, and that we'd sort of gone back a decade this year because the results of the lockdown will be that better off parents will be able to afford to hire private online chemistry tutors and poorer kids who have no laptop of their own or device won't be able to access or they might not have the motivation, or the parents might not have the time to spend to invest in them, and that we've really gone backwards over this last 6 months.
Well, we'll have to see how the evidence sort of comes out over the next sort of 12 to 18 months to see whether that's true. I hope it's not. One of the things that the government is trying to do is set up this national tutoring scheme where students, and particularly students who can't access private tuition, can get 75% funded private tuition via their school. So schools are being invited to nominate students who they think will benefit from extra support, who could be in danger of sort of falling down and falling behind, the type of students you've just described, and actually get them some extra support. And the government have worked closely with the Tutors Association, amongst other organisations, to try to get this up and running. They're inviting anybody who they feel can contribute to this to get involved. So recent graduates, even if they haven't been involved in education, are able to sort of apply and get involved in this. But you have to be part of a lot. There are a number of hoops that you have to jump through if you want to get involved in this. You have to be a member of a large tutoring organisation. It's very hard for me to do it as a standalone. You have to have worked, your organisation has to have evidence of having worked with a school in the last 12 months or something. So it does feel to me that a great project that this is, and how it could help to redress that balance, it does feel to me like these government contracts are going to get hoovered up by the big players in tuition.
Yeah, it's the same with everything, isn't it?
Same with everything, same with my industry, that.
Yeah.
It's always the little guy who gets squashed.
Government mates get the contracts.
Yeah, and just regulating you out of existence. There's been a change to rented accommodations recently because of the fallout from Grenfell, where they've mandated that people who rent out properties have to have the wiring tested when there's a change in tenancy, or every 5 years, and it's mandatory for the first time. It used to be just gas, but it's not. Yeah. And I looked into it, and I've been doing landlord certificates for years, and I looked into it. I'm going to have to pay for an extra day's surveillance visit, which I don't know what the cost will be. I have to have £250,000 public indemnity insurance. I have to do this, that, and the other. It's like, it's not worth it. Not bothering. So I can't offer that service. It'll be the big limited companies with 10 sports on the books that'll hoover up all that work, and they'll be able to name the price.
Yeah, 'twas ever thus.
Sorry?
I said 'twas ever thus.
What? Is that Latin?
'Twas ever thus. It's always been that way.
Yeah. I was going to ask as well. Sorry, there's a fly in. I was just going to ask you, Steve, as well. Well, we touched upon it. And how old is your daughter, did you say, Ben? Is she 8?
She's 7.
7. So I think, how do you feel about this kind of the SATs and the exams and having an exam when you're 8 kind of thing?
It's pointless, isn't it? It's league tables again. It's just so you can say this school's got 80% of children who passed an exam at this level, therefore it's better, quote unquote, than another school.
It all comes down to your reasons for doing it. When I was at primary school, I'm pretty sure that I had kind of formal exams at the end of every year, but there were multiple choice questions.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
Remember those?
Yeah.
And I remember the teacher saying, when I would have been probably about your daughter's age, Ben, about eight years old, the teacher saying that these exams, you know, are not, you know, well, I don't, she didn't say they weren't important, but she used the right language to totally take the pressure off us and to make us feel like we didn't, you know, it didn't matter if we didn't do very well. But what she did say is, as you get older, you will take exams and they will be more important. And the older you get, the more important the exams are. So I think as a mechanism for preparing...
Prostate exam, that's the big...
I think for sort of preparing you for that exams are going to happen and they are going to be important. I think that's a good thing. I think, you know, the idea of kids at 8 years old taking exams and those exams are going to go into a table and they're going to be used as a stick to beat certain schools with. I can't see it ending well in any way. You know, you have a situation where teachers feel under pressure. Well, the heads feel the pressure for the results. They transmit that pressure to the teachers, get these results or else. The teachers then are in a situation where they're teaching to the test rather than actually teaching kids to love the idea of learning. So there's a phrase that I'd read somewhere, apparently an educator once said, you can't fatten a pig by weighing it.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's the point. You have to have some exams, you have to have some way of showing achievement and attainment, but they should be designed to get more serious as the children get older. And they should be, any exams that kids take at a younger age should be treated very much as, this is to give you a feel for what you're working towards right now. Don't put yourselves under pressure. You know, there's nothing riding on it as such. That's
sounds like just hoop jumping to me. And it seems like it's inevitable when you have some sort of mass standardized education system. Is that it requires monitoring.
That or coursework, I guess, isn't it? Rather than a final exam or a viva.
Well, that's interesting because again, going back to a former education secretary who decided that education should have been the way that he had it 40 years ago.
Exactly.
And we should move away from modular exams to a final exam. If we had the old A-level system still in place, and by old I mean the one from about 9 years ago, then students in year 13 would have taken exams in January of year 12, summer of year 12, January of year 13. 67% of their marks would have been known. So they would only miss 2 modules. You would have been in a far better position to predict their final grade. It would have been a far, far better situation to be in. Now, for all the things that I blame the former education secretary for, nobody could have predicted the global pandemic that would have caused exams to be cancelled. You can't make policy on that basis. But it still doesn't change the fact that his reform made teachers' jobs far worse and led to a situation where an awful lot of young people were utterly distraught just over a week ago. So
well, I'm sure he'll realise that and apologise for it any day now.
We're waiting a long time for that.
The upshot of it is that that's all been rectified now, hasn't it?
What's been rectified?
The disappointed kids, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it has been. It has, but by and large, it has been fixed. But there were a few days where they were, you know, in limbo, not knowing where they were.
What are the consequences of this? What they've done with having the record-breaking exam results?
Well, that's a good question. One of the consequences is that universities UK are tearing the hair out because they don't have the university places for all the students with the grades. That is a consequence of what's happened.
So, like, for example, someone who was predicted A stars across the board, never missed a day of school, superb student, the ultimate #1 student in the country, could miss out on a university place because someone who was predicted C's and B's is going to take his place instead. What about that kid?
Well, exactly. There are a lot of kids who on results day didn't think they got their results. Then we moved they're basically, the university confirmed, sorry, we can't offer you a place due to your results. Then the government make their U-turn, that student's results are upgraded, and all of a sudden they do have the grades that was required for that place. They've gone back to the university to say, it turns out I do have the grades, where do I stand? And the university is in a situation where they've allocated all the places. That has happened. I think that's still ongoing and will be ongoing for a while. One of the things that the country's medical schools have said to the government, have said to Matt Hancock, we need more places for medicine, and they're petitioning Matt Hancock to create more medicine places for this year, because medicine is one of the most expensive university courses you can take, and tuition fees don't anywhere near cover it.
Right.
The universities need extra funding for the government for that.
Mm.
So that's one thing, because medicine being such a sought after university course.
One thing I'd heard is that the government were encouraging middle class families to try and get the kids to take a year out.
Surely that just causes an issue for the next year.
That's what I mean. It means that this problem rolls over to next year. So when people take their exams next year,
let's just never deal with it.
They're then competing with kids who have artificially inflated grades for places.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is one of the many unintended consequences of this. Due to the general nature of the pandemic, there will be far fewer international students this year.
Mm.
So that does free up a lot of places. So the situation of places may resolve to an extent.
I think I might be wrong, but because they pay for their own fees, those places are uncapped. So it doesn't. That's just bad news for universities, because that's where they make all the money, because they charge them more.
Pay massively inflated fees. There's concerns that a lot of universities could go under.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which again will mean we're losing places again for the kids next year and the year after and the year after that.
Yeah. This is going to rumble on and on.
Mm.
Do you think there was any way they could have made the exams go ahead?
I was thinking this at the time, because when the schools were closed, I think it was about a week before they were due to finish for Easter, and I was hoping that they could have just held off for what? No, actually, I say it was a week. I think there was more time. My feeling at the time was: is there any way they can hold out till Easter, keep the schools open till Easter, and use the Easter holiday as a chance to work out what to do? I was surprised, even when the schools were closed. I did wonder whether they would try and sort of have the exams still happen. I mean, I guess I was looking at it from my point of view, because the way in which I teach students wasn't being affected. I think I rather naively thought that schools up and down the country would turn heaven and earth over to continue to provide an education remotely. I genuinely did. And that's why I contacted the school to say, look, if you need help, I want to help you. And it was clear once the exams were cancelled that wasn't going to happen. I think the only way they could have still had the exams is if they come up with a national strategy for keeping the education system going, even if it was remotely. There probably just wasn't the time to put that in place there. And essentially every school was left to fend for itself, as we said. So
in other words, it wouldn't have been fair if the schools had stayed shut and then expect the kids to take the exams. It wouldn't have fair, and we'd put us in a record, lowest grades for the last 20 years. Sort of.
It would have come back to what we said before, that if the exams were still happening, the parents who could afford it would have employed private tutors to keep their students going, and the ones who couldn't afford it, who were left to fend for themselves, would have been at a disadvantage, and that would have shown in the results. You would have had, I think, the most uneven set of results. You know, you said about social mobility has been put back 10 years. That's what you would have thought. Well, the results in the summer would have been horrendous on that metric.
Pre-open the workhouses, get some masks made, hand sanitizer.
Yeah, get them all working.
Yeah, everyone's happy. Happy.
It seems like there was never going to be a good outcome, I guess.
It's quite difficult, isn't it?
Mm.
It's like the ethical thing, isn't it, versus the other side of it, which is the whole mess anyway.
Yeah, it's been horrendous all round.
Oh, hang on. I've just thought Sweden didn't close their schools.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Could have just done that.
Just carried on.
Occurred to me. Yeah, they just carried on.
I wonder what would have happened if we'd have just carried on. Guess we'll never know.
They have
Like swine flu. Swine flu was a similar sort of level of panic at the start, but then everyone just went, "Oh yeah, it's fine." Well, at least that's what I remember. I mean, loads of people died from swine flu. People are still dying from swine flu.
Are they?
Yeah, of course. It's a seasonal strain now, H1N1.
Oh, that's the flu, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just called flu now. They've dropped the swine, have they?
Just flu, yeah. No, if you say swine flu, that's where you get your panic.
There's more people are dying of flu a week now than COVID.
Have they stopped calling everything COVID now then?
No, it's just it's down.
Season.
It's down that low.
Must have.
Double digits a week now, I think. I think there was 6 today.
I think there's hospitalizations are lower as well, aren't they?
Yeah, there's the scientists are not sure about this, whether they think it could be a less strain. It might have mutated.
Yeah, I've read that.
Well, the virus is only successful if it doesn't kill its host. So.
Like you said, we covered it all on the podcast.
It is, yes.
Months ago.
That would be good news, wouldn't it? If it's mutated to a mild inconvenience. I mean,
yes,
that would be great news.
Yeah.
I just think.
Would they say that though? Would they actually tell us that, or would they still focus on getting the vaccines out? And they're already talking about saying, "Oh, this might be a thing where you're gonna have to have a vaccine every year."
Ben?
Who's them?
Wearing my tinfoil hat.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, sorry.
You're not suggesting the government would like to keep us scared, are you?
Just under control. I don't know. I mean, I've heard reports, or I read something somewhere. I can't remember.
Here we go.
Someone was saying that there may have to be multiple vaccinations every year to cover this, which makes very little sense.
Well, I mean, I don't know. How many people the flu kills thousands every year, doesn't it? And we have vaccines for that.
Yeah, a great vaccine might only be 60% effective.
Right.
So.
And isn't there a top up vaccination for flu as well? Can you have more than one?
I imagine you could be vaccinated against all of them.
The same thing.
Right.
Limitless. Like a bottomless refill.
A hexavalent flu vaccine that protected against 4 strains of flu and then 2 strains of coronavirus, and just call it the winter jab or something.
Yeah. So they're doing, because I work in the NHS, that they're pushing now for everybody to be vaccinated for flu, which they do every year anyway. But it's been rebranded this year to take the pressure off services, so you don't, in case you get ill with flu, rather than having to call your doctor because you got ill with flu, have the vaccination instead. That's how it's been pushed this year. I can't remember what they normally say.
It's the annual winter crisis that every country in the
Yeah.
world has.
Oh, that's it for now. Yeah, it's just more to do with COVID and
Yeah, people are indoors more
Mm.
and poorly ventilated.
Mm.
Makes you think, like, when they told us to stay indoors.
Yeah.
Probably the worst place to be.
There must still be all those strains of cold and flu and all that sort of stuff that's there all the time anyway, going round. So I think a lot of us
I can
haven't
vouch
picked
for
those
that.
up. Well, yeah.
As soon as my son's gone back to nursery, and I think he's onto this is a baby. He's onto about his third cold in 8 weeks, I would say. Third or fourth. One temperature.
It's good.
One COVID test.
Build up that immune system.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it true that the common cold is a form of coronavirus?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So
4, 6, is there?
Oh, there's loads. There's loads.
Single digits.
with any luck, this is me. This, I mean, I hadn't considered it before tonight, but maybe this is just going to mutate into another form of the common cold.
Hopefully.
It depends whether they designed that into it when they made it.
Who's they?
Chinese. Chimera. They're experimenting. You know, to make this virus so that we can do tests on it and work out how they work. Oops, it got loose.
FEMA camps.
What a great story. Somebody should do a film about that.
Go to the water. They turned the friggin' frogs gay.
Oh, man.
Right, we're rocking up onto an hour.
Oh.
Oh, that's so quick.
Thanks for coming, Steve.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Don't forget
Cheers,
to check the website, onlinechemistrytutor.net.
Yeah.
That's it.
You're not afford.com.
No, not available. When they beat me to it.
Should have make them an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah.
Some
Take
tutoring.
Right, we'll be back in a flash for the debrief. Got some COVID news and some housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
See, housekeeping.